Washington state is facing an immediate $903 million shortfall. Or is it a shortfall at all? Washington state is at a crucial turning point where the state is the crown jewel of the Pacific Northwest, but it is facing major financial crisis. And lawmakers have found the simple solution, and it is a new income tax. And they say this one is just for millionaires. And it's a 9.9% tax on incomes over $1 million. But here is the lie and the Trojan horse that they're not telling you is that they are going to take these taxes to everyone. And this new proposal is structurally flawed, highly illegal according to our state's own constitution, and historically guaranteed to expand beyond the wealthy and essentially end up crushing the middle class. The future powerhouse of Washington state is at risk, and the one person leading the charge is a self-proclaimed revenue queen. Like, this is her own label, Senator Noel Frame. And in this video, we're going to talk about what the proposal is, the legal loophole that they're going to use to sneak this past the Washington state constitution, and show you the dark history of income taxes from 1913 that proves this won't stop at just the rich. If you live, you work, you invest, or run a business here in Washington state, you need to hear this. And before we dive into the Queen's plan, I'm Anton Stetner. I'm a real estate guy who plays all the games in real estate. We own a bunch of real estate businesses and sell real estate here in the Seattle metro. And if you would hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, this is going to be the only tax-free action you can take to this fight, because they're going to try to tax the subscribe button here in the future here in Washington state. Senator Noel Frame is running point on the tax policy for Democrats and is championing this progressive tax policy with a clear track record of pushing taxes aimed at wealthy or large corporations. She's quoted as saying she doesn't want Washington to become just a rich person's playground or the Cayman Islands of the United States. She believes that Washington state's tax system is regressive and wants to rebalance it. But the problem is it won't stop there. The current proposal circulating among Senate Democrats is a 9.9% tax on the AGI, or the adjusted gross income, above $1 million, estimated to affect only about 20,000 households here in Washington state and generate a potential $3 billion in new revenue. Frame and her allies have sponsored previous attempts like a wealth tax, which passed the Senate but stalled. The high income earner tax is the next escalation of their tax war against you, the Washingtonian. And here's the kicker. And what's crazy is this almost makes me a little bit sick. Frame knows this is a huge fight and warned people in a meeting, be prepared to win 3 times over. We're going to have to win in legislation, we're going to have to win in court, and we're going to have to win at the ballot box. Why would she say that? Why is it such a legal risk? Because technically an income tax, according to the Washington state constitution, is illegal. And we'll show you why the Supreme Court in Washington state has decided, it likes to bend the rules here a little bit in this next section. So Washington state's constitution doesn't explicitly ban an income tax, but a series of Supreme Court rulings started with Colton versus Chase in 1933 deemed a graduated income tax. This is because the court held the income tax as property under the state constitution, and taxes on property must be uniform and capped at 1%. A progressive multi-tiered tax like the one proposed violates the Uniformity clause. Let's rewind that back and give you a quick breakdown. An income tax would be okay based on this ruling. It would have to be at 1% and would have to be across all income levels. It cannot be different at different income levels because that is what violates the Uniformity clause. So the legal maneuver they're hoping works this time, because the Washington State Supreme Court upheld it, was when they passed the capital gains tax and they said it wasn't an income tax. The Washington State Supreme Court relabeled it to bypass the Constitution by ruling capital gains was an excise tax on the transaction of selling assets, not a tax on the income, aka the property itself. This is the whole thing they're going to hang their hat on, is they've already said, oh, that wasn't money that you made. That wasn't income. This is an excise tax. It's a transfer tax. So they're betting the court will then stretch this again, this excise tax definition, to cover the continuous earnings of AGI, wages, interest, stock comp, etc., effectively overthrowing the previous precedent from 1933. However, this is a massive legal risk, and you, our listener, are going to help stop this, just like I'm making this video about this, because these are the things that are absolutely destroying Washington state. Because taxing as AGI, adjusted gross income, is functionally indistinguishable from taxing income as property. But wait, you think this tax only would tax the rich, right? Like they're saying, I'm only going to tax the rich. It'll never get to you. Well, has it ever happened in history that that was a lie before? So in 1913, the US introduced its first income tax, and the federal income tax that you pay today and I pay today was only applied to 1% of the population, that evil 1%, even back in 1913, in the last century, before pretty much any one of us was even born. Understand, in 1913, the 1% was people that made over $3,000 a year, about $80,000 by today's standards. And it was just going to be 1% of their income. But as we know, the federal government didn't stop there, and now everyone is getting taxed unless you make less than $14,000 a year here in the United States. So do you think Washington state is going to stop at the top tax earners, or do you think they're going to come for the middle class next? Drop it in the comments below. See, Washington state does not have a revenue problem. Washington state actually has a spending problem. Washington state does not have a revenue problem. Washington state has a spending problem. Take a look at this graph here. Basically from 2013 to projected here in 2027. You have seen that inflation is up 47% during that same time period, while population is up 16%. But what's happened to the state revenue, aka in taxes? That is up 117%. It is far outpacing population and far outpacing inflation. In other words, we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem here in Washington state. So prior to 2025, Washington state faced an enormous projected shortfall of $12 to $16 billion over the 4 years of the 2025 to 2027 biennium budget cycle. Now they closed that with $9 billion in new taxes, the largest tax increase in Washington state history that Governor Ferguson said he wasn't going to sign, but he signed anyway. Now, right after the largest tax increase in Washington state history, they are saying, I'm thinking about more new taxes, not cutting spending or being fiscally responsible. And despite these massive tax hikes, the state is still underperforming on the revenue side. And that's where that $900 million decrease in expected revenue through 2029 is coming from. Our state's chief economist even called this all bad news. Well, maybe we should just spend a little less. The current reality is Washington state's budget is $78 billion for 2 years, and the structural shortfall is driven by more spending growth than revenue shortfall. The only fiscally responsible path forward is to decrease spending, not introduce constitutionally questionable taxes, chase job creators and high income earners right out of the state. We must demand accountability and spending reform before signing off on any new taxes that's eventually going to get pushed to everyone. Washington state is here at a crossroads. We can choose the path of the revenue queen and get more taxes and start just taxing everyone and spending. Or we can choose the path of being fiscally responsible and fight for spending reform and possibly even band together and go get some initiatives passed to prevent things like this. This is a fight we cannot lose if we want Washington state to enjoy the economic prosperity in the future that it has today. See, that prosperity today is from the past, not from today. We want to be the economic powerhouse in the future. It's time to push back. Share this video with one more person who needs to understand what's happening with our income tax policies and our revenue here in Washington state. I'm Anton Stettner. Thank you for watching this video. Hit that subscribe button so we can talk about the economy, Washington state, finance, business, and real estate here in our great state of Washington.